our next guest is also new to the show, and his name is Geoff Bennett, and he is with PBS NewsHour and also a published author. But his book comes out actually next Tuesday, and it's called Black Out Loud, and it talks about the history of Black comedy. So, Geoff, it is pronounced Geoff, correct?
That's right. Yeah, and it's
Okay.
good to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being on the show. As a matter of fact, one of our company's oldest customers, um, told me about your book
Okay.
last week. I already knew about it, but she didn't know I knew about it. And she heard an interview you did on NPR.
Uh-huh.
And so she told me about it, and I told her that you were going to be on the show. So that I already
Well,
knew
great.
about the book. And so the word is getting out there. And as an author, now, do you have other books that
No,
you?
this is my first book, my debut book.
And do you have a copy of it to show our audience? Do you have a copy of the Ark or the Galley cover?
Not down here. No, not with me.
Okay, well that's
Uh,
fine. But it's
yeah.
called Black Out Loud, and it focuses on Black comedy. Now, what made you uh, select comedy as
Yeah.
this is your first book?
Right.
What made you decide I want to focus on Black comedy?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've covered national politics for 20 years. The co-anchor of the PBS NewsHour. Before that, I covered the White House for NBC News, and I was a frequent anchor on MSNBC. And so when I had this opportunity to write a book, one of the first questions I got from one of the publishing houses was, why don't you write a political book? Why don't you write a book about Donald Trump or Joe Biden? And my response was, when you write a book, and you know this, it's the thing you're thinking about when you wake up. It's the thing you're thinking about when you go to sleep. It consumes so much of the space in your brain. And I didn't want to have politics take up any more space in my brain.
Then it
And I wanted
already
to
had.
focus, yeah, I wanted to focus on cultural coverage. And the
Okay.
book really began with a lingering sense of curiosity. And I was born in 1980, came up really in the 90s. And the thing that I was thinking about, especially watching how my teenage son consumes media on his phone and it's all short clips, was, I grew up in an era where there was Martin in Living Color, Living Single, A Different World, Cosby Show, all on the air at the same time. It wasn't as if there was one breakout hit. All of these shows were on the air, competing, cross-pollinating, really pushing the culture forward. And so the question I had was, how did that happen? How did you have all of these young Black creatives have that access, the agency, and the money to be able to front those shows? They just weren't starring on those shows. They didn't own them. They created those shows. They had ownership of them. They were creating depictions of Black life. And so for Black folks watching, what you saw were different versions, different visions of Blackness. And that was huge. And so what I really wanted to do was unpack that moment, how we got there, what it meant for those shows to be on TV for as long as they were, and then how it all unwound. So the book is in many ways an oral history. So I talked to Barry Diller, who launched Fox Broadcasting Network, who created the environment for those shows to exist. I spoke to a number of the actors and showrunners connected to those shows about their experiences. And then, as I started doing the interviews and the research, approaching this like a journalist would, I realized that I couldn't tell the story of the 90s without telling the full history of Black comedy in this country. So the book traces its start all the way back to minstrelsy in vaudeville and works forward through, Red Fox and Moms Mabley and Flip Wilson and Richard Pryor all the way through the 90s. And so it's a complete cultural history of Black comedy in this country.
Oh, okay. Now the minstrel shows, a lot of them were blackface. They were white people um,
Yeah,
that wore
yeah.
blackface. A lot of
There,
those.
there were, there were, and there were also Black actors like Billy Kersands, for instance, was one of the first um, nationally recognized comedians. But because, he was a product of his era, he had to perform in these really narrow racist constraints. And so even then, when he was really forced to do caricatures and minstrelsy and wear blackface, there were aspects of his performance where he was trying to infuse some dignity and some humanity, which is really interesting to go back and watch that now and see some of the pictures, because that was the only kind of performance they were allowed to do. And minstrelsy back then, that was mass entertainment. That was as if, you would turn on the TV now and watch ESPN or watch, Lifetime movies or whatever. That at the time was what people were doing and what people were watching was either white folks with black cork on their face or black folks with black cork on their face mocking what they perceive to be blackness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that well, also in the earlier days of television, well, that would have been vaudeville, but in the early days of television, there weren't that many competing shows, so
Hmm.
there weren't there were only three networks, and so it's not like now we got a gazillion stations, channels, all kinds of
Yeah,
channels.
yeah,
So when families watch things, there were millions of people. It might be a third of the country watching something because it
yeah,
was
yeah.
unlimited.
Excuse me. And that's worth really emphasizing because, yeah, to your point, these shows that I mentioned, they weren't just popular with black folks. Had that been the case, that would have been great. But they were popular across the board. The Cosby Show was number one for years. A Different
Mm-hmm.
World was number three. Cheers was number two. And then you add to that Martin and Living Color, Living Single. Arsenio was top rated in late night. And so all of this was happening in the 90s. And the question is, why? So Barry Diller, who started Fox Broadcasting Network, told me that he knew that Fox had to be different from the big three. ABC, NBC, and CBS in prime time, he said, the sitcoms they were putting on the air were fairly indistinguishable, and he wanted Fox to break out. So the first pilot he greenlit was a show called Not the Cosby Show, because the producers of this show knew that they had to be the antithesis of what the Cosby Show was. And that show went on to become Married with Children, which was this subversive sitcom
Oh,
that most people
I
will
remember.
remember.
I
So when
remember.
Married with Children took off and was successful, that then created the formula for everything else. And that's how you get a Keenan Ivory Wayans, who created, obviously, In Living Color. But even beyond creating that show, he had to create a pipeline of talent because the pipeline of talent for comedy, sketch comedy, was all about Saturday Night Live. And In Living Color was a very different show. So he had to go find actors and comedians like, Jim Carrey and David Allen Greer and Jamie Foxx and, don't forget Jennifer Lopez and Rosie
Was a
Perez came off
dancer.
that show as dancers, as fly girls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a legacy to these shows too.
Now, the Living Color was in the 80s. It was
It started
before.
in the 90s. April 1990 was when that show
It.
came on the air.
Are you sure about that? Because I
Uh-huh.
remember
Yeah.
watching In Living Color in like the late 80s. The one they had when they had Louis Farrakhan as the reign of Khan. Some of the sketches was just so hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm not. I think it was the late 80s. I
No,
think
I've done the research and
actually
it's been
you
copy edited back
sure?
and forth. It was April 1990 was when a Sunday in April 1990 when that show went on the air.
Okay, well, okay. I need to go back and look at my. I actually
And
have the all the seasons of In Living Color on DVD.
yeah, yeah.
I
And same, do you
they
have the
they were
Chappelle
so
show too?
hilarious.
Yeah.
Hmm?
You have the Chappelle show too on DVD?
No, I never got the show. I never watched the Chappelle show.
Oh, okay.
Like I only watched an episode here and there. I wasn't one of the. I watched Martin,
Hmm.
and well, before these shows, you had the Jeffersons
Hmm.
and Good Times. Before that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And the point I make in the book is that even though they were black sitcoms, they were created and written by white folks. And so what's so specific about the 90s is you had
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah, you
I
had
see where
you
you're going
had
with it.
black writers in the writers' rooms and
Mm-hmm.
black creators. And so these shows were very specific and authentic. And in being specific, they were universal, which I think is also
Mhm.
really interesting because you could make the argument that a show like Martin, if if you're living in the middle of the country and you don't know any black folks, don't have any black friends, why would you be tuned into a show like Martin? And it's because he was so specific and funny and authentic that there is a kernel of truth that resonates for people, even if they don't know what it is to be a radio DJ in Detroit and have your friends always in your house cutting up. You know what I
Yeah, the 90s shows were, because they were written by Black people, the creators were, they were less prone to being stereotypical.
mean?
You know, it was more, it was really groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
my daughter, who's will be 30 soon, one of her favorites is Living Single. She loves
Hmm.
that show. And it wasn't on when she was growing up, but it's just hilarious. The things that they do on there is the scenes, that the ideas, just the camaraderie among the characters on the show, the
Yeah, yeah.
interactions that they have.
Yeah, I spoke with Erica Alexander for this book, who played
Okay.
Maxine
Mhm.
Shaw,
Yes.
and one of the questions I asked all the actors connected to these shows was, did you understand the cultural impact of what you were doing at the time? And they all said no, because at the
Mm,
time, what they were trying to do was create shows that were funny and resonant and that would drive people to watch week after week. But she said over time folks like Kamala Harris and Diana Presley and Stacey Abrams would come up to her and say, "Your character, Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, inspired me to go into whatever high-powered profession it was, whether it was the legal realm or politics." And it was because, those shows allowed people watching to sort of play in their mind's eye what that would be like. And that's important. And that's missing now. I mean, these days we don't have a monoculture where there's no shared reference points. You might have a couple of
right.
tentpole moments like the Super Bowl or
Mm, mm,
Oscars or whatever. But for the most part, people are in their silos, doing their
mm,
own thing, watching their
mm,
own thing. You don't have families sitting down for a half hour,
right.
watching these shows and then talking about them the next day with their friends or their work colleagues. And I think that's missing from our culture, and we pay a price for that.
Mm. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I shows used to be clean, you
Hmm.
know, when I was growing up, the whole family would sit around watching shows, and everything was clean. There was no
Hmm.
profanity. There was no sex. In fact, the even the shows where people were married, where there was a married couple, they didn't even sleep in the same bed, and they would be fully clothed. So, they would be head to toe, from neck to
Right.
toe. But the family sat around and watched. And from what I understand, before television, with radio, that happened too.
Hmm.
You had the whole family sitting around listening to the radio.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
do you cover movies? Do you cover films from like
No,
what?
so I covered, so with the News Hour, we covered the full range. So for the most part, I've covered, for most of my career, covered national politics, covering the White House, Congress, Supreme Court. But over the course of my work at the News Hour, we also do a lot of arts and culture coverage. So interviewing, actors and producers and authors. I do a lot of interviews of authors. And so my work really straddles hard news, covering hard news and political everything. Now it's the war in Iran, with the cultural coverage. And one of the takeaways from this book is that, especially we saw this with diversity policy, where diversity policy and DEI has been rolled back. One of the arguments I make in the book is that culture culture and politics move at different speeds, and there is a durability to the way the culture can move the country forward that does not exist with our politics. So I say all that to say, as we just saw with the unraveling of affirmative action and DEI, politics can be debated, policy can be unwound, but culture has a way of seeping in. So when you do have 20 million people sitting around their television at home with their families watching The Cosby Show or watching A Different World or watching A Living Single, and seeing all these different depictions of Black life and Black joy, Black ambition, aspiration, comedy. That seeps in, and it really, I think, shifts the American imagination. And it's harder to unwind that as opposed to, specific policies that can be undone at the snap of a finger. So that's the other sort of takeaway with this book, that the way the culture moves and our cultural products, whether they're books or TV shows or movies, that stuff really matters. And sometimes it gets scoffed at, sometimes it gets viewed as secondary, especially for folks who cover the news, other journalists, because they're always sort of focused on hard news and political news or foreign affairs. But I really do think that focusing on what's happening in our culture matters too. And this was a book that hadn't been written, really. No one had ever really looked at the 90s Black sitcoms in terms of their cultural impact. And that's what I sought to do with this book.
Oh, okay. Now, do you cover movies in the book about comedic movies, comedy movies?
To a lesser degree. So, talk about Eddie Murphy. I
Yeah.
cover movies in the context of the comedians, if, comedians who did that work. So Eddie Murphy obviously had an incredible film career. So did Richard Pryor. Bill Cosby to a lesser degree. Um, of course, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence were box office stars with Bad Boys. And the story
Mhm.
about how that movie came to be is in this book too. But the main focus is on television.
Oh, okay. So, is it's Fresh Prince in there?
Yep.
Okay, okay, so you are covering that. So what you start with vaudeville more or less as a backdrop or historical uh,
Right.
beginning for it, but then most of the content of the book is about the '90s because of the creative side of
Right. Right. So it
it.
start with vaudeville and minstrelsy and then push forward. So from there you get to, Billy Kirsan's Mom's Mabley, Hattie McDaniel is in there.
Okay.
Then it's Flip Wilson, Dick Gregory, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, and then we get into the 90s. And each show has its own chapter. So Fresh
Oh,
Prince and
okay.
Living Color,
Okay.
Martin, um, Family Matters gets a mention because
Okay.
even though that often isn't sort of viewed as a quote unquote black sitcom, it certainly was. And ABC built their entire TGIF lineup based on that show. And then I end with Chappelle Show. So Chappelle is sort of the button on the 90s. That show was in the early 2000s, but that's kind of where my coverage of this comes to a close in the book.
Oh, okay. All right. We have some questions.
Mhm.
Someone said, do you sit down with your son and watch any TV together?
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for the question. We watch A Different World. I went to Morehouse. I'm trying to
Okay.
encourage him to go to Morehouse. So
Okay. Now,
uh,
is he in college or in high? Is he?
no, he's in middle school. We
He's
got a
in
little
middle
while
school.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you're planting
yeah,
the seed.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. The Cosby Show still holds up. In the book, I don't spend a lot of time talking about Bill Cosby's uh, the,
Issues.
the monstrous accusations and the stuff that he
Right.
did time for. I try to separate the art from the artist.
Oh.
But that show is, as we know, that show is hugely important. So yeah, so really, it's A Different World and Cosby Show that we sit down and watch. And then, the A Different World's getting rebooted by Netflix. So they're down in Atlanta right now shooting the next, or I guess the first season of the A Different World reboot, and Debbie Allen is connected to it. And in my coverage of A Different World in this book, everybody I talked to said she came in and she saved that show. And her sister, Felicia Rashad, after the first season, said to Bill Cosby, this show isn't working and you need to fix it. And the way to fix it is to bring in my sister Debbie. And that's what he did. And she went in there and cleaned shop in the writer's room and she went to Howard. So she had the experience of having gone to an HBCU and
Mhm.
basically refashioned that show to be more authentic and real, and saved it.
Oh, wow. Now, someone else says, well, you did mention this. What inspired you to write the book? And they've been watching. So, and they talk about how many stations, channels there is. It's so fragmented now, and not just TV, but TikTok and what's online.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
had mentioned, I know with my stepson's children are, oh, they're 13 and 11,
Mhm.
and they spend a lot of time just watching like shorts,
Yeah.
reels. It's like 5 minutes is too long, and they don't really watch movies that much.
Hmm. I know.
So I
It makes
wonder
me
what's,
sad.
yeah, I wonder what's gonna happen to
Oh my
to
goodness.
film in the
Yeah,
future.
I had to sit my son down and make him watch Coming to America because I was like, you need to understand first of all the classics,
Yeah.
but if you also have to understand what it is to create a story, to craft a story, to even craft a joke. And that's the thing. I mean, obviously, people of a certain generation always feel like their generation had it the best. I know I certainly do. But what we've lost with everybody on their phones now is you have potentially 8 billion storytellers because everybody on the planet basically now has a phone. Everybody can hold their phone up and tell their story and hit upload. But what you're missing is quality control. When you don't
Mhm.
have that gatekeeper system, when you don't have a studio system, when you don't have a writer's room where people are sharing ideas and literally, writing ideas on a whiteboard and figuring out how to come up with either it's like a sketch comedy or maybe it's a scene for a sitcom, working together collaboratively to put that together, to test it out in front of a live audience, all of that creates a better product as opposed to me just sitting in my room talking to my phone and uploading it. Now, there is some funny stuff on YouTube Shorts and on TikTok. Certainly there is. But there's something to be said about a a process where you have, seasoned writers and seasoned actors and actresses who do this work together and put it on TV or put it on the internet or whatever. And it's quality work that sort of boosts and pushes the culture forward. That's what I fear that we're missing with everybody on their phones doing their own thing.
Yeah. Also, with the algorithm, uh, you're more likely to see the same things over and over.
Right.
That algorithm, and I've been, uh, I would say, a victim of it. You watch one thing, you see some, you see the thumbnail or the still, then you say, okay, well, this looks, what is this about? Then you click it, and then everything that's similar, and then you just get like flooded with everything, which means you really aren't getting any kind of balance or
Hmm.
even just variety. where's
Yeah.
where's the variety in that? And it really does, it's really like the absurd gets promoted now,
Yeah.
or people are monetizing other people's uh problems or downfall, or mistakes. You take somebody's a video of something somebody did that was really not good, it wasn't good for them, or just bad all the way around, then you post a little comment, and then you put it out there and it goes viral, and then that person's mistake becomes a monetization for somebody else.
Yeah. No,
It's kind of
it's a
like,
crazy
it's really
system.
absurd. But I
Yeah.
don't know,
And it's
I don't know
especially a problem when it comes to news. If you're getting
for
your
sure.
news off of social media, what ends up happening is you end up in an echo chamber and you are
Yeah,
seeing things that reinforce what you already believe.
right.
And that's not good at all.
No, and
Yeah.
then now with the AI, there's a lot of news that's not even real. It's totally
Hmm.
totally made up.
Yeah.
Um, and but it looks real
Hmm.
because AI can make it look. It'll say breaking news on it, and it'll be about a celebrity, and it's completely false. But it'll be a story because AI can just write a story, and people believe it, and then it's a I was going to use the term brave new world, but I don't know I don't know if that's the term I want to use. But I think we still will always need laughter,
Yeah.
um because if you focus on too much reality or realism or just seriousness, that's not balanced either. So,
Yeah, and that has been the story of Black folks from the very beginning. We have always found ways to find joy and laughter, even when the moment didn't necessarily call for it, and even when all the chips were down. Laughter, comedy, joy has been used as a survival tool. It has been used as a tool of resistance. It's a way to expand, I think, the American imagination. So this book gets to a lot of that. I mean, if you are a fan of 90s sitcoms, this is a book for you. If you're a fan of Black comedy, this is a book for you. Cultural history, this is certainly a book for you. But for me, I definitely wanted to give those creators and those actors their props because to think of it, Martin Lawrence, Keenan Ivory Wayans, Will Smith, Yvette Lee Bowser, who created Living Single, Mara Brock Akil, who created Girlfriends, the list goes on. They were in their early 30s, maybe late 20s when they were doing this work. They had a lot of weight on their shoulders. And because they succeeded, it allows space for an Issa Rae or a Lena Waithe or a Quinta Brunson to create Abbott Elementary. So the history of Black comedy in this country, history, frankly, of Blackness in this country, has always been someone carrying the baton and handing it off to the next person. And what I found in this book is that that has certainly been the case when it comes to Black cultural creation. There have always been people doing the work, and when it was their end of the road, they sort of handed that baton off to the next person. And so the DNA is there. The DNA is in that lineage, and this book speaks to all of it.
now where do you see comedy going in the future? Like do you see where do you have like a crystal ball from the research that you've done on it? Um,
Yeah,
how do
well,
you perceive it?
stand up is still really, really effective. I mean, Dave Chappelle is still doing stand up specials for Netflix, and they're more social commentary in many ways than they are pure stand up. Uh, Obviously, we talked about social media, TikTok and YouTube, so it's certainly there, but it's diffuse. So in some ways, an Eddie Murphy special or a Richard Pryor special or a Dave Chappelle special because so many people were watching them, or Chris Rock, for instance, or Kings of Comedy, Queens of Comedy too. So many people were watching them simultaneously. It really shifted the culture. Now it's harder to do that because there's so many people doing so many things in so many different silos. So that's the future. The future is there will always be talented Black comics. There will always be talented Black storytellers, but the platforms have changed. And so in some ways it gets harder to find those people and the voices become more diffuse, but the work is still there and the work is still good. It's just harder to find.
Okay, well, the book is called Black Out Loud, and the author's name is on the screen, Geoff Bennett. And go check it out. It comes out next Tuesday. Let me see.
Next Tuesday, but you can pre-order it now, and it's actually in some bookstores already.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. So please support and please pre-order and buy the book, Black Out Loud. And I'm doing a book tour too, and you can go to
Okay.
blackoutloudbook.com, and all my tour locations are on there.
Okay. Where are you starting?
Starting in LA and then DC, New York, Philadelphia, and ending in Atlanta for now. And then we'll do some more in early April
Okay. And are you based in the DC in
in DC.
DMV?
Yeah, of
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being a guest on the show.
course.
Congratulations on your first book.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your
And
interest and support. I appreciate you.
oh, you're welcome. Have a great night.
You too. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.